heard of Romeo and Juliet, and you've also heard of Luke and Laura from the daytime soap opera, and you've probably seen and watched Gina and Martin from the Martin Lawrence show. And then you've probably wondered, does love like that really exist? Can you find love like that? And do people have these type of emotions for each other? Well, we know that's true. One of our guests today, who has been on PATV, has written several books talking about the love of her parents and how love like that really does exist. It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to Pauli Rose Libsohn. Welcome.
Oh, hi, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm so glad to speak about my last book that I just wrote.
Yeah, and last book of
this whole series.
This whole series here.
Yes.
So 6 books now in total.
Yes, yes. What I wanted to do was, in this series, I wanted to document everything. So I started out with the first book, Immortal Kisses, Confessions of a Poet. This book really I published because of a promise that I made to my mother.
This one here?
Yes,
okay.
To publish all the poetry that she wrote. Now that poetry that she wrote over a 35-year period. Yes. But what I didn't realize is that all the poetry that she wrote was documenting her love affair with my father. And I only realized that after she passed away, because she never told me, because she felt that that part of her relationship with my father was very private, and she didn't want to share that depth and emotion and love with me, because they kept it all to themselves. I saw it, I saw how it existed, and I saw how they acted with one another, but they never really went into it with me. After this was published, I was going through her papers, and I found more poetry that she never even showed me. And I started to go through it, and I realized that those poems were poems that she wrote about her relationship with my father, but after my father passed away. So it's a different tone, but basically the same. And I found 135 poems.
Right.
So then at the same time, when I was going through that, I found essays that she wrote on love, because she was all about love.
So you found poetry that your mom had written that you hadn't seen over a 35-year period.
Right.
And so you worked through that.
Yes.
And now you finished the book, and so do you think you're done, or is there more books that pop up out of that?
Out of Immortal Kisses or Songs of You?
Just in general.
There is no more poetry left. I scoured the entire house. I went through every piece of paper, every bag that she saved consisting of old papers, every box. There's nothing left. And for each discovery came a book. In other words, every discovery that I made, I created a book from that discovery. And the name of the last book that I just completed is Messages of Love Remembered. And this book consists of poems that my parents wrote to one another throughout their 60-year marriage. And I found them in greeting cards that my mother had saved that I didn't know about, that they wrote to one another from 1945 all the way up to the present.
Wow.
And it just really solidified their tremendous love that they had for one another. However, the book, What is Love?
Yes.
That's my biography that I wrote of my parents. And the reason why I did that was because during this whole writing experience, I started to lecture at various schools. And after each lecture, the people there could not get over their story, and they prevailed upon me to write my book about it because the story was so fascinating. And I wrote What is Love in 6 days. I discovered really certain things about my parents that I did not know.
So you wrote this book in 6 days. Now,
6 days.
I can't write, I mean, even writing scripts for my shows takes me like a week. So you wrote a whole biography of your parents.
Yes.
And in writing that biography, how did you discover the new things? I mean, this is obviously you were there.
Right.
But did you talk to family? Did you talk to friends? Like, how did you compile? How did you go through this process? What led you to
Well, what happened is I have no family. So I knew about a scrapbook that my parents had kept. I learned about how they lived when my father was in the Army. I learned about how hard it was for them to get married. I learned about where they went for their honeymoon. I learned about them And I would have never known what my parents were truly all about with their romance if I had not written this book.
What did that do for you emotionally? Because if I'm right, your parents had passed at that time that this book was written. What did that do for you in terms of going back to see their story? Did you find closure in areas that you didn't?
Yes.
Tell me, which areas did you feel like you hadn't, you didn't know, and it was like, wow, there's a sense of peace here?
Well, I didn't know how hard it was, the struggle that they had to go through to get married. It was a tremendous struggle because my mother's mother was from Europe, and for some reason in Europe at that time, back in the 1890s, early 1900s, the eldest daughter or the eldest son had to get married first if there was more than one child in the family. And it had nothing to do with whether or not they liked, let's say, the third child's husband's choice or wife's choice. It just had to be that way. And so when my mother went home to tell my grandmother, her mother, that she was getting married, a big fight ensued, and she was prevented from seeing him. And as my mother explained in papers that I found, it wasn't because she didn't like my father, it was just because of that rule. In order to see him, she would climb out of her window at night and climb down a ladder, and my father would be waiting down the street. Then she was found out, and another big fight ensued, and she was finally given permission to marry my father, but nobody from the family came to the wedding. Finally, my grandmother acquiesced and said, okay, I'll come. But my mother's two other sisters did not come because she got married. My mother was the youngest child. But then afterwards, my mother wrote on a piece of paper, which I found in the scrapbook, she said, what was I supposed to do? And then she said, to heck with all of them. I got married, I had a life. And then the other sister had to elope, and then the other sister never got married.
Who was the oldest?
Yes.
So had they waited for the oldest sister to get married, your mom would never be married. Right.
I also learned that there had been a separation between the two of them.
Your parents.
My parents. And this was after their romance at the beach where they met. And I never knew about that separation. I don't know why they separated, but then all of a sudden they met on a subway platform. And they rushed into one another's arms, and I always felt that was divine intervention. That's how they got back together.
Let's talk about your most recent book.
Yes.
Messages of Love Remembered.
Yes.
So we know their love story.
Right.
We know that they've had this immense respect and admiration for each other.
Yes.
In writing so many books about your parents and the love that they shared, what was the biggest challenge in writing this book, or the obstacle? Because what stories do you tell, or what do you recount that it seems like is a recurring theme in their life?
Well, what I did was, when I found these poems, I separated them into categories. Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays, moving day, graduation day, anniversaries. And then what I did was, from my recollections, I told stories about what they did on their anniversaries, on their birthdays, on Mother's Day, Father's Day. I really gave the public windows into their lives, into their everyday lives, and how they really cared so much for one another. For instance, let's say on an anniversary, they would start months in advance going to stores to search for birthday cards for one another, and planning that anniversary or planning that birthday. It was really amazing. And they put so much time and effort into it. And my mother would go out and buy my father outfits, and she put her heart and soul into it. My father always got my mother a book, and they always wrote messages in those books to one another.
Will you give us a window into their life by reading one or two pieces of works for me?
Yes. This is a poem that my father wrote to my mother back in 1950 in a greeting card.
Okay.
Now, also, I just wanted to explain, they had a magical honeymoon, and they honeymooned on Lake Winnipesaukee, and the name of the place that they went to was the Weirs. And it was so magical that throughout their lifetime, they referred to the Weirs at all times. So here's one poem that my father wrote to my mother, and this is for their anniversary. To Mitt, the most wonderful wife in the world. Now, my mother's name is Mitzi, but he always called her Mitt, okay? I've started and stopped so many a time to express by words fancy and in rhyme of the joy and happiness that's filled my life since 5 years back we became man and wife. Let's not forget that cherished day, no matter how fast time flies away, for it's brought such a treasure of happiness dear, strengthened so firm to form our love and unending weir. Your adoring husband, David. And he ended it with an unending weir. That means an unending honeymoon, because their marriage was constantly compared to just being on a honeymoon. My mother wrote in 1950, the same time, to him. She said, "Sweetheart, unlike the south wind that winds its way away, I shall stay forevermore your kiss to know. You are more than ever my sole happiness and heart's desire. Adoringly, Mitzi." So these two were exchanged for their anniversary in 1950.
You mentioned in your book that your parents would like secretly, the night before their anniversaries, run down to like put their cards on the table.
Yes.
So that way whenever they got up in the morning, each one of them would find.
Yes.
What was that like, capturing moments?
That was fantastic. My mother would always be the first one to come into the kitchen. She would open up the cards. She'd be sitting at the kitchen table, reading them and rereading them. She'd say to me, "Look what your father got me." And then I couldn't get over. She would just keep poring over those cards so adoringly. And then she would always open mine, you know, and I would always say love and millions of hugs and kisses, Pauli, but no real message. But she adored my cards too. And then my father would arrive, and she'd give him a big hug and a kiss. He'd say, well, he said, now it's my time to open yours. So then he'd sit at the table reading, you know, my mother's cards, and then he'd get up, and he'd give her a hug and a kiss, and he'd pat her on her backside, and he'd say, "Lovey, you're the greatest." And those cards would stay up for an entire week. They wouldn't take them down, and they would really quote-unquote party for a whole week for the anniversary or the birthday.
I'm about that life. I party and celebrate any holiday that has to do with me for about a month.
They would.
Stay tuned, y'all, for the monthly celebration. So watching your parents, because it is a tremendous story.
It is.
What 3 lessons have you learned about love that you can share with our audience? Because, you know, love like that is rare these days. So what insight can you give me about love?
Well, in today's world, I find that when people get married, they get married with the thought that they can always get divorced if it doesn't work out. When my parents got married back in the 1940s, people didn't think that way. They thought this was for life and that they were going to work on it. And they had a real passion for one another. They never thought that, God forbid, if it doesn't work out, there was going to be a divorce.
So number one, when you get married, think divorce is not an option.
That's right.
Okay,
I mean,
what's the other 2?
In today's world, it's fast food, fast sex, cell phones. Back then, it was a slower pace, and you didn't have all these outside things coming into the marriage, and therefore it allowed them to focus on one another. As opposed to today, there's so much else that people focus on, and they don't stop to think, well, I need to focus on my wife, or I need to focus on my husband. The caring, the intense caring of back then in the 40s and 50s is not there today.
So number 2, make sure you court slowly and preciously. Don't rush anything. No fast food and no fast anything. Okay? Sorry. No fast food or anything. Okay, number 3?
And number 3 is to think of that person and their feelings and their emotions at all times, and ask them, is it okay? What would you like? Let's work it out. They always discussed everything with one another. It was always a discussion, and they wanted to, whatever kind of decision they had to make, they wanted to make sure that the other person approved, or if they didn't, how they could make it work.
Okay, so number 3, make sure to be considerate of the person you are with. So it's not all about you. I might have failed in that area with a lot of people. Full transparency. Okay, so one of the things that I admire, you have 6 books here, and you have appeared on PATV quite some times.
Yes.
One with Shirley Bruno, another time with Grace Corella.
Yes.
Who we love and adore.
Yes.
Shout out to Grace. When you were on her show, and we'll show a clip of that in a second.
Show? Or?
Yes, Grace's show.
Yes.
You said that every time you finished a book, your parents would let you know.
Yes.
So
I got signs.
Yeah, so
yes.
So let's show the audience first what you spoke about with Grace.
Okay.
And then when we come back, you can tell us if or when it happened, what we just saw, okay?
Fantastic.
All right, let's take a look.
Okay. Yes.
And you're very tolerant of them because they kind of rearrange things in your home. You know, like your mom does this to you.
Yes. My mother, almost each time a book comes out, a painting falls off the wall.
Oh, wow. No, I love it. She's very dramatic.
Yes.
Come on!
Yes.
You know, or since I fell for you, bada boom. Okay.
Right.
All right, I like it.
And
Okay.
then my father's lion falls over. And then there was another statue that fell over. And it's always when the books come out.
Well, that's their way of salute. Salute, I'm hearing. That's their way of mazel tov, of saying, you know, you, instead of stepping on the glass and breaking the glass, they throw a statue or 2 over.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, since I fell for you, I think it's lovely that they want to make sure that it's noticeable, they're saying.
Oh, I know.
You know, it's a statement.
Right,
they said. Yeah, that's so cute. They're adorable.
So I bet you're probably wondering if it happened this time, right? So you finished this book.
Yes.
Did your parents let you know?
Okay. Yes.
So what happened?
I couldn't believe it. I finished this book. I brought the book into the publisher in last September. It usually takes about 9 months for the book to come out. I told them, I said I wanted it for the spring. It was going to come out in April. And I said, oh my goodness, I said, April. They got married April 26th. The book came out the week of April 26th.
Look at that.
I almost fell over because I said to myself, out of all of the months, out of all of the weeks, and all of the days, the book came out for April 26th.
So this is the 6th book. This is the final in the, I don't know if it's
in the series.
In the series.
I call it a series or an anthology.
The anthology.
Right.
So what's next for you?
Well, what I want to do is, I feel that I'm a writer now because of this.
And you are.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to write something else. I have some ideas going around in my head. I was going to try my hand at writing a short play about my parents, but I'm taking a break until the fall because I just want to relax a little while because I never stopped. In all the 6 years, I went from one book to another. I never stopped.
So I'm just curious because the way I get it is that you thought you were done with the 5th one and then you found the box with all the cards.
I thought I was done with What is Love. But then what happened was I found papers that my mother saved on Shakespeare that she wrote when she was in college.
And you started writing more.
And so I published that book, My Mother and Shakespeare, A Daughter's Journey.
So what happens now if you find another pile of poetry from your mom or your dad?
Then I'll have to create another book.
Okay.
But at the moment, I feel that it's done.
Okay.
That's what I feel.
And I've had the fortune of actually reading Messages of Love Remembered, and it's a great book. So for our audience out there, where's the series available?
On Amazon. Amazon.com. You can find all the books.
Okay.
Okay.
And how do people get in touch with you if they want to hear you speak? I know you said you
yes, I do. They could get in touch with me by my email.
All right, and it's going to be on the screen if it's not up already.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure it's up. And I think before we go, because it's just important for the soul, that you read a few more pieces.
Yes.
2 more pieces, please.
I'd like to read what my mother wrote to my father on moving day, when we moved into our home in Brookville. She likened that house to their honeymoon cottage, and this is what she wrote. Dearest David, thank you for everything, especially for yourself and all the glorious hours, planned and unplanned. The beach led to the weirs, and the weirs led to this, the fulfillment of all our dreams in our dream house. All my love always, Mitzi. March 1971. And it was. They never left that house. It was a constant honeymoon. They just wanted to be by themselves. They had friends, but they just wanted to be by themselves in that house because it reminded them all their lives of that magical honeymoon. Isn't that something?
It is, definitely.
And then what I'd like to read also is a poem that my mother wrote to my father on Father's Day. And she wrote, Love to the Big Fish. Now, they always went to the beach together all the time, and there was always a pool in their lives. So she wrote, Love to the big fish I swim around with the best of all. I'm baited, hooked, and caught, and want to stay on your line always. Mitzi, June 1965.
What a beautiful...
Isn't that something?
It is.
For my mother's birthdays, I want to read you this. My father wrote to my wife, this is on her birthday. Happy birthday to my wife, a beautiful person. I will always be yours. With all my love, David. September 1993. And then he wrote, there's only one you. What truer words can express my thoughts for you, your ever-loving husband, David.
Those two definitely are the Romeo and Juliets of our time.
Yes.
Without a tragic ending, though.
Yeah. That's
Without
right.
tragic ending.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm grateful that you have come here to share this wonderful story with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited about this series.
Yes.
I think there might be one more book, but I'm gonna.
There might be.
There might be. So
you never know.
I want to thank you for coming on. I know our audience is really excited that you were here.
Yes.
If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at info@patv.org. If you have any comments, or maybe you want to share stories about the loves of your life or your parents, send us a note on our social media accounts at PATV Long Island. And it's been great sitting with you and sitting with you.
Thank you.
So I'll see you soon, guys. Bye.